On a freezing morning in February 2020, New York authorities responded to an emergency call from a luxurious apartment on the Upper East Side. The caller reported an unresponsive young woman. When paramedics arrived at the scene, they found 21-year-old Indian student Asha Verma lying motionless on the living room floor. At first glance, it looked like a tragic medical collapse, perhaps a seizure or a sudden cardiac arrest. But within hours, investigators realized the truth was far more disturbing. What they would uncover over the next few weeks would shake Manhattan's international student community and devastate a family thousands of miles away in Delhi, India. Asha Verma had come to the United States only 6 months earlier, in August 2019, full of ambition and dreams. The daughter of a humble school teacher and a nurse, she had grown up in a lower middle-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Delhi, where opportunities were limited, but aspirations were limitless. She had earned a partial scholarship to study computer engineering at Columbia University. Her entire community had celebrated her achievement, praising her as the girl who proved that hard work could overcome circumstance. For her family, Asha was more than a daughter. She was a symbol of hope. But by the time winter arrived in New York, the dreams that once sparkled in her eyes had begun to fade. Her early months in the city were filled with enthusiasm. She excelled in classes, joined the robotics club, and quickly blended into the diverse network of international students. Her video calls home were always cheerful. She would describe the skyscrapers, the buzzing subways, the snow she saw for the first time in her life, and the beautiful campus buildings that made her feel like she was living inside a movie. But outside those video calls, the reality was different. The cost of living in New York quickly overwhelmed her. The scholarship covered only a portion of her tuition. The rest of her expenses, rent, food, books, and transportation, came from her parents' modest salaries and whatever she could earn working part-time at a campus cafe. Asha tried her best to stretch every dollar, but Manhattan was ruthless to students with limited means. She lived in a cramped, shared apartment in Harlem with 2 other international students. The room was small, drafty, and often noisy. She tried not to complain, especially to her family, because she didn't want them to feel guilty or worried. Her roommate, Lila, a Nepali graduate student, would later tell investigators, "Asha was always smiling, always positive, but sometimes late at night, I would find her staring at her bank statements or crying quietly because she didn't want anyone to hear." Her financial struggle made her vulnerable, emotionally and psychologically. And into that vulnerability entered a man who would completely alter the course of her life, Ethan Hayes. Asha met Ethan on an evening in late October 2019 inside the Columbia University Library. Her old laptop abruptly shut down while she was working on a major programming assignment. She panicked. Repairing it would be expensive, and buying a new one was impossible. Tears welled up in her eyes as she tried pressing the power button repeatedly. That was when Ethan appeared, as if on cue. A tall, sharply dressed man in his early 40s, wearing a dark tailored coat and carrying a leather briefcase. He introduced himself with a warm smile and a calm, polished voice. "Looks like your GPU might have failed. I work with tech startups here in Manhattan. Want me to take a look?" Asha hesitated at first, but Ethan had an air of confidence and kindness that made him feel trustworthy. Within an hour, he took her laptop to a repair shop he claimed was owned by a friend. By the next morning, her laptop was fully functional, and he refused to take any payment. "Bright students deserve support," he said gently. "I was an MIT engineer once. I know how hard this journey can be." Asha thanked him repeatedly, not realizing that this seemingly generous gesture was the first move of a carefully constructed trap. Over the next week, Ethan began messaging her, checking in on her classes, sending her articles related to tech careers. He invited her for coffee at a sophisticated cafe near the Upper West Side. Everything about him was impressive. His knowledge, his confidence, his elegance. He made Asha feel seen and valued in a city where she otherwise felt invisible. To her, he looked like a mentor sent by fate. To him, she was another target. As November passed, Asha found herself spending more time with Ethan. He introduced her to high-end restaurants she had never dreamed of entering. He talked about venture capital, artificial intelligence, and global tech markets. He spoke to her like she was a rising star.
He told her she had potential to become someone extraordinary, and slowly, Asha started believing him. But with each meeting, Ethan subtly increased his influence over her. If she talked about her friends, he would dismiss them as distractions. If she mentioned homesickness, he would tell her she was stronger than that. If she worried about money, he would reassure her that life always rewarded talent. In December 2019, everything escalated. Ethan invited her to a holiday dinner at a restaurant overlooking Central Park. After dessert, he casually mentioned that he owned an unused apartment on the Upper East Side, fully furnished, secure, close to campus. "Why don't you stay there?" he said. "Harlem is not safe. You deserve better. Think of it as my investment in your future." Ashana immediately refused. She didn't want charity. She didn't want to rely on a stranger. She didn't want to betray her values. But Ethan pushed gently, carefully. "You're like family, Ashana, and I mentor many young tech talents. You're not the first." That sentence, "you're not the first," would haunt her months later when she finally uncovered the truth. But in that moment, she didn't understand its meaning. After several days of persuasion and emotional nudges, Ashana reluctantly agreed to move. She convinced herself it was temporary. She didn't tell her family. Ethan made her promise to keep everything private, saying her conservative parents wouldn't understand and the university might misinterpret a professional mentorship. When Ashana stepped into the Upper East Side apartment in January 2020, she felt both awe and fear. Marble flooring, large windows, sleek furniture, a view of the East River. It was the nicest place she had ever lived. And it became the cage she didn't recognize until it was too late. After she moved, Ethan's behavior changed. He began setting rules disguised as concern. He insisted she share her class schedules for safety. He asked her to keep her phone location on in case something happened. He disapproved of some of her friends. Soon, Ashana saw them less frequently. He encouraged her to dress more professionally and took her to upscale boutiques, paying for clothes she never asked for. Then came the turning point. One evening in late January, after dinner at his penthouse, Ethan told her quietly, "I feel a connection between us, something deeper, something special." Ashana froze. She stammered that she didn't see him that way, that she respected him only as a mentor. Ethan didn't get angry. He simply smiled and said, "It's okay, you'll understand in time." But after that night, subtle punishments began. If she declined his invitations, he became distant. If she didn't respond quickly, he became disappointed. Eventually, he began giving her weekly allowances, $2,000 at first, then $3,000, saying it was support for her studies. But the money came with strings. She had to spend more time with him. She had to dress how he preferred. She had to be available. Layla noticed Ashana's stress. She noticed the expensive clothes, the secrecy, the late nights, the sudden emotional distance. But whenever she asked, Ashana dismissed her concerns with nervous laughter. She felt trapped, financially, emotionally, socially. In February 2020, Ethan escalated further. He wanted intimacy. Ashana refused. For the first time, Ethan showed flashes of anger beneath his calm exterior. He reminded her how much he had done for her. He guilted her. He pressured her. He said he owed him something in return. Ashana felt suffocated. For weeks, she lived in fear. Fear of losing her apartment, fear of disappointing her family, fear of being exposed, fear of Ethan. She started losing weight. Her grades slipped. She cried silently at night. And then she made a discovery that changed everything. On March 3rd, 2020, Ethan forgot his tablet at her apartment. Ashana had no intention of invading his privacy, but a notification appeared on the screen moments after she picked it up. A message from a young Brazilian girl. "You said you would send the money. It's been 2 weeks. Are you avoiding me?" Ashana's heart pounded. She opened the tablet, hesitating, but curiosity overpowered her hesitation. What she found inside felt like a nightmare, a folder titled Prospects. Inside it were files on multiple young women, mostly international students, dating back 4 years, photos, conversations, financial records, surveillance screenshots, and worst of all, videos from hidden cameras. Ashana realized the truth. Ethan had done this before, at least 7 girls. Patterns identical to hers. Offers of mentorship, gifts, apartments, then blackmail, emotional and financial exploitation. One file belonged to a Russian student named Yelena, reported dead in 2018, officially ruled an overdose. But Ethan's tablet had messages discussing how she had panicked and needed to be handled. Another file showed a Malaysian student whose intimate videos were sent to her family after she tried to escape. Some girls went missing after she confronted him. Ethan discovered he had installed hidden cameras in her own apartment, cameras she never knew existed. They recorded everything, every private moment, every breakdown, every time she undressed. She dropped the tablet and collapsed to the floor, shaking violently. For 2 days, she could barely breathe. She considered going to the police, but she knew Ethan was powerful, well-connected, and careful. She considered running home, but she feared he might retaliate. Finally, on March 10, 2020, Ethan called Layla, crying uncontrollably. "He's a monster. I found everything. I need to stop him. I can't let him do this to other girls." Layla begged her not to confront him, but Ashana had already decided. On the afternoon of March 11, 2020, Ashana asked Ethan to come to the Upper East Side apartment to talk. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. Neighbors reported hearing muffled shouting around 6:30 p.m. Around 7:10 p.m., security footage showed Ethan leaving the building adjusting his coat calmly. At 7:26 p.m., building security received a noise complaint from Ashana's floor. By the time authorities reached the apartment at 7:49 p.m., Ashana was gone. Ethan's lawyers claimed she had suffered a sudden medical collapse due to stress, but investigators found bruising on her wrists, signs of struggle, and most importantly, hidden cameras, exactly like the ones in the files she discovered. When detectives seized Ethan's devices, they found erased surveillance logs, encrypted folders, and financial transactions tied to multiple victims. But Ethan fled the country before he could be arrested. As of today, he remains missing. Ashana's death was officially ruled a homicide under suspicious circumstances. Her family's world shattered. Her father said in a tearful interview, "She went to study, to build a future. We never imagined she would be destroyed in a foreign country." Ashana's story became a tragic reminder of how predators exploit the vulnerabilities of international students, loneliness, financial stress, and the desire to succeed. Her dream ended in a luxurious apartment that felt safe, but was actually a cage. And the man she trusted as a mentor turned out to be a monster, hiding behind wealth, intelligence, and charm. Ashana Verma's name lives on today among international students in New York, a warning, a heartbreak, and a story of a girl who deserved a chance at life, but instead met the darkest form of exploitation.